Hello and welcome back to Damn Parenting. I'm Evie, your host, and I'm so happy you're here with me again. Whether your little ones are napping, zooming around the house, or determined to help with everything, why don't you grab your chai, your coffee, or just a quiet moment if you find one, because today we're going to be diving into some real talk about parenting life and all the beautiful chaos in between. Listen, being a parent in the Netherlands is actually no joke. Already, it's a full-time circus with bikes flying everywhere, rain falling at the exact moment you forget that rain cover, and the Dutch paperwork that needs a PhD to be understood. But picture this. You arrive in a brand new country with two babies under two, one hand steering the stroller through the cobblestones, the other one swiping desperately on Google Maps while the tiniest human is demanding another snack again. And your laptop, the essential bit you need for that freelance work, is buried somewhere under those 15 snacks or diapers, maybe even a pacifier or 5. And you're trying to set up a home, line up childcare, respond to clients across all different time zones, and maybe, if the universe is kind, sip a hot coffee while juggling the jet lag, Zoom calls, and those tiny little humans all at once. How are parents meant to do all of this? Where are we meant to find this village when we land? Well, that's why today I'm going to be chatting with Alexa Starks, a strong voice of working motherhood. She's talking openly about the identity crisis after maternity leave and who's helping redesign workplaces that actually honor the fact that motherhood changes everything. So sit back, grab a hot coffee or tea, or maybe some of that old coffee that you left yesterday, and let's dive into a very real situation for some of our community. Welcome, Alexa.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to move to the Netherlands with two little ones under 2?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am originally from California and then moved to Dallas and met my husband and spent 10 plus years in corporate America, started my business, helping working moms. And, after the election, I would say my husband and I are not the biggest fans of the current U.S. government, to put it very politely, because you never know who's listening. But among other things about the U.S. system, we decided that we wanted a better place to raise our kids. And so we ended up actually looking at a few different countries, right? We looked at Mexico and Cancun because it's just a 2-hour flight from Dallas. And we looked at Costa Rica, similar, because we're both beach people. We love the beach. And so we looked there and we're like, oh, we could, maybe homeschool our kids or put them in an international school and they'd be, surfer dudes and stuff like that. Then we were like, I don't think that's the best future opportunity we could give them. And so we looked at the Netherlands and some other Scandinavian countries like Denmark and Norway and Sweden that are ranked, kids with the most happiest life and lowest stress and best work-life balance and socialism, social programs that the U.S. sorely lacks. And so we ended up falling in love with the Netherlands. And we've probably watched over 1,000 YouTube videos researching different countries and different aspects of the Netherlands. Once we really honed in on the Netherlands, which area do we want to live in? Is it Amsterdam or The Hague or where we are now in Almere? And what is life like, right? Like, it's so different moving from the US, especially with a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old, that you have to think of every single factor that will play a huge role in the life that we will have and the future that we give our children. And then it was a huge, huge decision that we eventually did. And 10 out of 10, we wish we did it earlier. We absolutely love it. Such a great decision.
What's actually surprised you the most about the transition, both as a mom and a freelancer, like settling into this new country?
Surprised me the most, I would say, is just the better pace of life. Like, no one's hustling over here with 3 jobs to make ends meet. And no one's over here with crazy high medical bills, unable to afford basic insurance, or, God forbid they break their arm and now they have a $20,000 hospital bill, right? And so it's just a better way of living in general, that people aren't as stressed. People aren't barely surviving, from what I've seen.
Wow, you really go hardcore. I was expecting the Dutch paperwork or the IND or trying to get a bank account when you need a house address or something else.
I mean, God, those were all challenges for sure. I mean, it took us a while to get a Dutch bank account, and we ended up going with Wise to get like at least a European bank account in the meantime before we could get the Dutch one. So there were definitely challenges in the IND and the paperwork and following up, and that has definitely been a headache and a challenge. but it finally all came through. But at least, surprising in a good way has been just the better quality of life here.
That's good to hear. On your LinkedIn post, you talk about the identity shift after maternity leave. How does that show up for you personally, especially starting from a fresh new country?
That's a really good question. I think, when you truly can't predict or anticipate the identity shift that you have when you become a mom, like there's nothing you can do to prepare for that. It just happens and you have this new identity and these little people that you have to take care of, and you find all this strength in you that you didn't know you had to survive massive sleep deprivation and all the other fun things that come with, feeding a newborn and all that, and then balancing being a working mom, but then packing up and moving to a whole new country. I don't know if it's equally as hard of an identity transition to now be an immigrant, but it's certainly very challenging. And it's certainly been a whole new transition to now be a working mom in a new country where I don't speak the language. I'm an immigrant. I have to deal with paperwork and visas and my residence permit and all these new systems and, running my business, starting a business here. It's all very challenging, and this whole new identity. So it's definitely, I wouldn't say collides, but it definitely tacks on a whole nother level of complexity to an already working to establish a new motherhood identity.
Yeah, I can only imagine. It's a massive impact becoming a mother, and I think it's very understated, misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
Lack of research and everything else that goes along with it. But to add the major complexities and psychological elements as well of moving to a new country, be it with, as you say, languages, but also when you're talking about communities, even brands, knowing which diaper you're meant to buy or what's this in Dutch, because I don't know what diaper cream is in Dutch or what's... Yeah. And the infamous paracetamol. If anything is ever wrong with you, just make sure you have paracetamol in your house, because that's all you'll be told to take. Regards settling in, what parts of building a life here with your young kids were easier than you expected, and what parts were especially tough?
I think when we first moved here, we started in The Hague. And that was because, based on our research, The Hague was a vibrant city, but not as city as Amsterdam or Rotterdam. And so we found a neighborhood to do a short-term stay, and we loved it, but it was still fairly city. And so we ended up finding a place in Almere, where we are now, which is much more suburbia, I would say, compared to Amsterdam. And so that's been an easier transition for us. I would say finding it easy to settle in has actually been finding daycare. And I know that's probably the opposite of what a lot of people will say. But because we chose Almere, it's not nearly as busy and populated as Amsterdam. And so we were able to get our kids on just a 2-week wait list to get into a daycare here. And that was huge, because when we were in The Hague for a month-ish, they were just home with us all day, every day, which was a huge change from being at daycare. So I went from being a working mom with daycare to now being a full-time stay-at-home mom, adjusting to a whole new country and trying to navigate everything. And so when they finally started in daycare, when we moved to Almere, it was kind of this wave of relief. But it was fairly easy to get them into daycare. And just talking to the people who work there and getting them in. So that was phenomenal, actually. Otherwise, everything else with the IND has been challenging, to say the least.
All the appointments and all the questions.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Did you come here on the DAFT?
We did, yes. So we came here on the DAFT, which is where an entrepreneur visa, essentially, to start your own business, whether you're, freelancing. But we started our own business here. It's a project management consulting firm. There's so much more paperwork also when you start a business here in the Netherlands versus just starting a business in the US. In the US, you just register it with like the Texas Secretary of State. Boom, done. 30 seconds later, basically. Here, you got to find the company, you'll submit the paperwork. And so we had to do that. And then you have to put money into it, and you have to submit all that paperwork with your visa application. And everything has to be like notarized, which is a very different process here with a notary than in the US. And it costs more money for a notary here. So it's cost money to set things up. So I would say if you're going to start a business here, make sure you have funds and savings to set things up because it's not as simple as it is in the US.
I've heard stories of people say they were required to have 50 grand already sitting in a bank account in the Netherlands just to move here. And all I could think of was like, how are people meant to just come here and not only have 50 grand sitting in a bank, but pay the extortionate fees of rentals and then daycare and everything else that comes along with it?
It is a lot. And I don't know that I'd say 50 grand, but I would say close to it. Because I mean, they have, so the Netherlands has the childcare allowance, right? I don't know the Dutch word. It's some very long consonant filled word.
Kinderopvangtoeslag.
Yes, that rings a bell. But in order to apply for that, you have to have your resident permit. And so it took 4 months for us to have our resident permit in hand and get that picked up from the IND. The kids started daycare before that. So we're just paying thousands of dollars for both kids for daycare every month. And so even though the childcare allowance gets backfilled, once we then had to submit it and it takes a few weeks, we'll get it for September and then it'll be backfilled till May. But so you have to have money to pay that monthly daycare cost up front, right? And so it's that. And then, you have to have I think the minimum is $4,500 in your BV bank account to open it, to start it here, part of the DAFT, and then got to pay yourself. So it's definitely a ton of fees. 50 grand, I would say, is maybe a high estimate, but a good baseline assumption.
Yikes. You just said you moved here in May. So we are only talking, you've now completed 4 full months here in the Netherlands?
We moved here in the beginning of April.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So you've been 5 months.
And then we moved to Almere in May. Yeah.
Okay. Have you felt a particular moment like I belong here yet? Because it's only been a short period.
I don't know that I've felt a moment that I truly belong here other than it feeling right. It feels good being here. And we've started to make some friends with the neighbors and with other moms of kids at daycare, and started doing some networking with other expat moms. I don't know that I truly can say I feel like I belong, but I definitely am getting there. It's a very odd feeling to really be an immigrant and be in a totally different country and a totally different way of life than what I've grown up with. So it feels right, and it's getting there. It'll probably just take a little bit.
You're talking to parents from daycare and some local moms. How else are you going about finding your village here?
I tried a few Facebook groups of different moms in the area and moms groups. I would say that's been okay. It's been pretty good. I'm not really big on Facebook. So if you're really into Facebook, then for sure that there's tons of Facebook groups out there. I don't frequent Facebook all that often, but it's been a lot of chit-chatting with other people at the park, right? We stand out as Americans speaking English very loudly when we go to the park. Evander, don't do that. And Evie, come back here. So if someone else hears us speaking English, they might say something. Or if I hear someone speaking English, I'll quickly run over and be like, you speak English? Like a crazy person. And so I'll have to actively try to make friends and socialize, which is a very weird thing as an adult to kind of try to do. Or we'll take our kids to go get coffee sometimes on Wednesdays because they don't do daycare on Wednesdays. They're home. And so there was someone that we just met chit-chatting at the coffee shop, and they had a similar aged kid to our daughter. And so I was like, oh, how old's your son? Oh, my daughter's same age, So it's definitely been some in-person networking, I would say, or trying to make friends, which is hard. But there's a billion Facebook groups out there if you're into Facebook.
And I was just wondering about Almere because obviously there's a lot in Amsterdam, there's a lot in The Hague and in Utrecht and Leiden. And so it's nice to hear that it sounds very friendly.
It does. It's very friendly. And then there's also a lot of expats here. There's a lot of people that used to live in Amsterdam that moved here because it's only 20 minutes outside of Amsterdam. So a lot of people will live here and commute into the city for work. So it's a ton of families everywhere. We have a little front yard and we have a little backyard, and there's a dozen parks within a 5-minute walk of here. So it's a ton of families, which has been really great because we'll literally see other people out walking. And our kids will run into their kids and try to start talking or playing. And I'm like, hi, I'm Alexa. Nice to meet you. I live here. Again,
that's the difference. Well, I mean, that's the difference with little kids is they could be 3, 4, 5, and they'll run up and hi, you're my new best friend. And as adults, We're moving to a new country going, how do I do this?
Yep. And I will say everyone's been really friendly, especially like Dutch people. Nobody's been like, oh, don't talk to me or, oh, you're American. And I don't know if it's because we have all young kids generally that we're like, oh, solidarity. Can we talk about toddler life? But everybody's been really friendly here.
Good to hear. Speaking of your profession, you've actually written about the chaos of remote work across time zone. How does freelancing from the Netherlands shift your work-life balance?
Yeah, I would say it changes it. In the US, I would just work 9 to 4, basically, when my kids were at daycare. But now, since most of my clients are US based, and then what we're building here on the Daft is Netherlands companies that we'll work with. So we do a mix of working during the day while our kids are at daycare, and then we'll pick back up work in the evening after they go to bed at 7:15, 7:30. So it's long days and nights, but that's partly because we've chosen this, I would say. It's sometimes exhausting, as is running your own business and trying to make ends meet and in a whole new country. So it's a lot, but again, being able to do that from my house, I don't have to commute into the city. I can stay here, work from home. Daycare is a 5-minute walk. So if I need my kids are sick, I can walk over and pick them up. And I have the flexibility of my own schedule. So I can move meetings around as needed, which is, again, one of the huge benefits of working for yourself.
That's for sure. You also talk about boundaries quite a lot in your posts. What are one or two boundaries you've set up that have truly helped you balance freelancing and motherhood and adjusting to your new life here?
Yeah, it's really, I block my calendar so no one can schedule meetings between the time I pick up my kids around 4:30. And then when we put them to bed around 7, by the time we're at like our fourth story, it's like 7:30, right? So no one can schedule meetings during that time, and I don't schedule meetings so that I can really focus on let's snuggle, let's play, let's do dinner or attempt to eat dinner and try to have a bath and stay in the bathtub and not climb out of it and have 14 bedtime stories because that's the phase we're in. And somehow. But yeah, so it's been just really time blocking so that I can get a significant amount of work done while they're at daycare and then after we put them down for bed.
Finally, I'm just wondering, what advice could you give moms or parents looking to move here to the Netherlands, especially with young children, trying to find their footing, build their community, and not lose themselves in this chaotic process?
Yeah, so many pieces of advice. I would say you should have a really good reason why you're going to move because it is very hard, right? Like we don't have any family here. So it's just my husband and I. There's no one that we can call. There's no one that we can say, hey, can you come watch the kids? We had our wedding anniversary last week and didn't go out because haven't found a babysitter here yet, right? So make sure that you have a really good reason so that when it gets hard, because it will, that you can power through it. And there's been so many times that my husband and I have fought because we're scrambling over paperwork with the IND or trying to figure out the Dutch healthcare system and getting health insurance. And, we're stressed out about money or business and just so many things to stress out about that you have a way to de-stress or work through that with your partner. And then I would say the sooner you can move with your kids while they're still young, the better. Because my kids, they're 2 and 1. So I didn't have to pull them out of middle school when they've got a bunch of friends already. I didn't have to pull them out of all their extracurricular activities and life they're building for themselves. So that was a huge benefit is that to them, they've adapted phenomenally well because they're 2 and 1 and they're picking up Dutch way faster than I will. Which is a hard language and it's hard to learn a language as an adult. My daughter will be bilingual from the start and my son's already like half fluent basically after, 3-4 months in daycare. So I would say the earlier you can move your kids, the better. And then having some sort of system to de-stress because there will be so many stressful moments.
What are your de-stressors?
Probably the gym. So we found a basic fit here and we'll go to the gym after we drop the kids off in the morning. And then honestly, I kind of meditate a little bit and I love listening. This is going to sound really cheesy, but I love listening to romance love songs because it gets me in all my feels. So I will like blast some Celine Dion or or like some old school Backstreet Boys or Boys to Men or John Legend, just like blast it. Whitney Houston, that's my go-to. Just like it gets me in my romantic feels. It was part of my birth playlist that I had. It would get me really all lovey-dovey, and so that kind of de-stresses me, and I'll like blast it and sing.
I was actually going to ask, are you playing this at the gym or are you just playing this at home? But now I know it's at home.
Sometimes, don't tell anyone, it's at the gym. And I'll be like squatting and singing like "I'll Run to You" by Whitney Houston at the same time. And I hope no one can lip read because that'd be...
Oh, you're mouthing the words as well as you go. You know what? You just do what you got to do, right? I mean, you got to take care of yourself in this. And if that's the way you do it, that's the way you're going to do it.
Yep, someone's got to do it.
Well, thank you, Alexa, for joining us on this episode of Damn Parenting with your honesty about motherhood, moving countries, and trying to balance work, babies, and, well, let's be real, everyone's own sanity. So if you're a new mom here in the Netherlands or a mom anywhere feeling like you're juggling 100 things to do with just 2 hands, remember, you're not alone. Building your village does take time. And some days the win is simply just getting that shower and a hot cup of coffee or doing a squat listening to Whitney Houston. Alexa has reminded us that motherhood changes everything. And instead of pretending nothing has happened, we should be asking not just our workplaces, but our friends and family and our communities and how they can catch up with what's going on. Thank you so much for listening to Damn Parenting. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit subscribe, share it with another parent who might need to hear it, especially those considering moving to the Netherlands, and leave us a quick review. It helps more moms, dads, and anyone who wants to find this space get here quicker. I'm Eva, signing off. Until next time, may your babies nap on schedule, may your coffee stay warm, and may you always find your way through the rain without forgetting the stroller cover. Bye.